Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the U-East horizon, watching the blue and green planet grow larger on the main screen. After 18 months of travel through deep space, they had finally reached their destination. Kepler 442b looked exactly like the scientists on Earth had promised. It had oceans, forests, and an atmosphere that humans could breathe. Beautiful, isn't it? Dr. Lisa Park said as she joined him at the observation window. She was the ship's chief medical officer and had become a close friend during their long journey. "It sure is," Jake replied. "Hard to believe we're really here." The horizon carried 300 people, all volunteers for humanity's first attempt to build a colony on another world. They had left Earth with high hopes and careful plans. The planet showed no signs of intelligent life from their scans, which made it perfect for human settlement. Commander Ryan Blake walked up to them, holding a datapad. "Sir, we're getting some strange readings from the surface. There are structures down there that our earlier scans missed." Jake frowned. "What kind of structures?" "Large ones, made of some kind of crystal or metal. They're arranged in patterns that look artificial." Dr. Park looked worried. "Could they be ruins? Maybe from an extinct civilization?" "Maybe," Ryan said. "But some of them are giving off energy readings." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. If there were active structures on the planet, it meant they weren't alone. "Put the ship in high orbit and launch a probe. I want to know what we're dealing with before we go down there." Engineer Maya Santos came running onto the bridge, her face pale. "Captain, you need to see this. We're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface." "A transmission?" Jake asked. "In what language?" "That's just it, sir. It's in English." Perfect English. The bridge fell silent. Everyone stared at Maya as if she had grown a second head. How could aliens on a distant planet know English? "Put it through the speakers," Jake ordered. A strange, musical voice filled the bridge. It sounded like several people talking at once, creating beautiful harmonies. "Greetings, travelers from Earth. We have been watching your approach with great interest. We welcome you to our world and invite you to join us on the surface." Ben Carter, the communications officer, looked up from his station. "Captain, the signal is coming from the largest structure we detected. It's about the size of a small city." Jake's mind raced. How did they know the humans were from Earth? How did they speak English? And why were they being so friendly? "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earthship Horizon," he said into the communicator. "We didn't know this planet was inhabited. We're explorers looking for a new home for our people." "We know who you are, Captain Morrison," the voice replied. "We know much about your species. We have been waiting for you to arrive. Please, bring a small group to the surface. We have much to discuss." Dr. Park shook her head. "This feels wrong." "Jake, how can they know so much about us?" "I agree," Ryan said. "We should be very careful here." Jake nodded. "You're both right, but we can't ignore this opportunity. If these beings are friendly, they might be willing to share the planet with us. If they're hostile, we need to know that too." He turned to his crew. "Maya, keep the ship ready to leave at a moment's notice. Ben, maintain constant contact with whoever goes down. Ryan, you're with me. So are Lisa and a small security team." "Sir, are you sure you should go yourself?" Ryan asked. "I'm the captain. First contact is my responsibility." 2 hours later, Jake found himself in his shuttle heading toward the planet's surface. Through the window, he could see the alien structures more clearly. They were beautiful, made of what looked like living crystal that pulsed with soft light. The buildings twisted upward like frozen music, nothing like human architecture. "Landing zone is just ahead," said Tom Wilson, their pilot. "The aliens have cleared a space for us near their main building." As they touched down, Jake could see figures waiting for them. They were tall, much taller than humans, with bodies that seemed to be made of the same crystal as their buildings. They had 4 arms each and moved with a strange, flowing grace. "Remember," Jake said to his team, "we're guests here. Keep your weapons ready, but don't point them at anyone unless I give the order." The shuttle door opened, and Jake stepped out onto alien soil. The air smelled sweet, like flowers and rain. The gravity was a little lighter than Earth's, making each step feel bouncy. The lead alien approached them. Up close, Jake could see that its crystal body contained swirling colors that shifted like oil on water. Its face was almost human-like, but with 4 eyes instead of 2. "Welcome, Captain Morrison," the alien said in that musical voice. "I am called Velthek in your language. I speak for my people, the Kethmer." "Thank you for welcoming us," Jake replied carefully. "Your world is beautiful." "Yes, it is one of our finest," Velthek said. "Come, let us show you what we have built here." As they walked toward the Crystal City, Jake noticed something that made him uneasy. There were other beings working around the buildings, but they didn't look like the Kethmer. They were smaller, different shapes and colors. Some looked almost human, while others were completely alien. "Who are those workers?" Dr. Park asked. Velthek's colors shifted to darker shades. "They are our helpers. Many species have come to live with us over the years. We provide them with homes and purpose." Something in the way he said it made Jake's skin crawl. The workers they passed kept their heads down and moved quickly, as if they were afraid to draw attention. "Your people seem to know a lot about humans," Jake said. "How is that possible?" "We have been watching your species for some time," Velthek replied. "We find you interesting. You have qualities that could be very useful." They entered the main building through doors that were twice as tall as needed for humans. Inside, the walls pulsed with light, and the air hummed with energy. Other Kethmer waited for them in a large circular room. "Please sit," Velthek said, gesturing to chairs that had clearly been made for human bodies. "We have prepared refreshments." As they sat down, Jake noticed that the other workers he had seen outside were now visible through the transparent walls. They were carrying heavy loads and working without rest. None of them looked happy. "Tell me about your helpers," Jake said carefully. "They don't seem to be Kethmer." Velthek's 4 eyes focused on Jake. "No, they are not. They are species we have encountered in our travels. We offered them the same thing we are about to offer you, which is partnership, protection, a place in our great work." Dr. Park leaned forward. "What kind of work?" "The improvement of the galaxy," Velthek said. "We have learned that most species are chaotic and destructive when left to their own devices. We provide structure, order, purpose." Jake felt his heart sink as he began to understand. "And if a species doesn't want your help?" Velthek's colors darkened further. "That would be unfortunate, but it rarely comes to that. Most species learn to appreciate what we offer them." Through the walls, Jake could see guards now surrounding their shuttle. They weren't guests anymore. They were prisoners. "I think we should return to our ship now," Jake said, standing up slowly. "I'm afraid that won't be possible," Velthek replied. The musical quality had left his voice, replaced by something cold and hard. "You see, Captain, we have plans for humanity." "Great plans, and they begin right now." Jake's hand moved toward his weapon, but Ryan grabbed his arm. Through the crystal walls, they could see dozens of Kethmer guards surrounding them. Each guard carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy. "Don't even think about it," Velthek sighed, his 4 eyes gleaming. "Your ship is already captured. Your people are being brought down as we speak." Dr. Park's face went pale. "What do you want from us?" The same thing we want from all species, Velthek replied. Complete cooperation. You will work for us, serve us, and in return, we will let you live. Jake clenched his fists. We'll never serve you? Velthek made a sound that might have been laughter. They all say that at first. But you will learn, just as the others have learned. The crystal doors opened, and more Kethmer entered. They carried strange devices that looked like collars made of the same pulsing crystal as the buildings. These will help you understand your new place, Velthek explained. They will make you more agreeable. No, Jake said firmly. We won't wear your collars. You don't have a choice, Velthek said. Two guards moved toward Dr. Park, but Ryan stepped between them. Stay away from her, Ryan warned, pulling out his weapon. The guards didn't even slow down. One of them pointed a crystal rod at Ryan, and blue light shot out. Ryan screamed and fell to the ground, his body shaking. The weapon hadn't killed him, but it had caused terrible pain. The pain weapons are very effective, Velthek said calmly. They cause no permanent damage, but the agony is beyond anything your species has ever experienced. We find they make excellent teaching tools. Dr. Park knelt beside Ryan, checking his pulse. He's alive, but barely conscious. Good, Velthek said. Now, will you cooperate, or do we need more demonstrations? Jake looked at his fallen friend, then at the guards surrounding them. They were outnumbered and outgunned. But surrender wasn't an option. We need to see our people, Jake said. We need to know they're safe. Of course, Velthek agreed. But first, you will wear the collars. It's for your own protection. The collars will help you resist the urge to do anything foolish. The guards moved closer. Jake knew they could fight, but Ryan was down and Dr. Park wasn't a soldier. If they resisted now, they would all end up like Ryan. All right, Jake said quietly. We'll wear them. But I want to see my crew. Wise choice, Velthek said. The collars were cold against their necks. As soon as they locked in place, Jake felt something change in his mind. His thoughts became fuzzy, and his anger seemed to fade away. He could still think, but it was harder to feel motivated to resist. The collars suppress aggressive thoughts, Velthek explained. They make you calmer, more reasonable. You'll find them quite helpful. Jake tried to feel angry about the collar, but the emotion seemed distant and unimportant. This was wrong. He knew it was wrong, but he couldn't make himself care as much. As he should, they were led through the Crystal City to a large building that looked like a prison. Inside, Jake saw his worst fears confirmed. Hundreds of beings from different species were locked in cells. Some looked human, others were completely alien, but they all had the same look of defeat in their eyes. Your crew is being processed. Velthek said, they will join you shortly. Processed? Dr. Park asked, though her voice sounded oddly calm. Sorted by ability and temperament. Some of your people will work in the mines, others in construction, and the brightest will help us manage the other species. Everyone has a role to play. They were brought to a section of cells where Jake could see his crew members being led in small groups. Maya Santos was in the first group, her engineer's uniform dirty and torn. She had a collar around her neck, and the same blank expression as the other prisoners. Maya! Jake called out, but she barely looked at him. The collar was affecting her mind, just as it was affecting his. Ben Carter was in the next group, along with Tom Wilson and several other crew members. They all wore collars and had the same empty stare. What have you done to them? Jake demanded, though his voice lacked the fury he wanted to feel. We've helped them understand their situation, Velthek replied. The collars make the transition easier. Soon, they won't even remember wanting to resist. Jake was locked in a cell with Ryan and Dr. Park. The cell was bare, except for sleeping mats and a small water dispenser. Through the transparent walls, they could see other prisoners in similar cells. "We have to get these collars off," Jake said, pulling at the crystal device around his neck. "I can't," Dr. Park said weakly. "I should want to, but I can't make myself care enough to try." Ryan was still recovering from the pain weapon. "What's happening to us?" he asked. "The collars are changing how we think," Jake explained. "They're making us passive, compliant. We have to fight it." But fighting it was harder than Jake had expected. Every time he tried to work up anger or determination, the collar seemed to drain it away. It was like trying to stay awake when you were very tired. Hours passed. Jake watched as guards brought in more of his crew. Each one wore a collar and had the same defeated look. The Kethmer were very efficient at breaking people's spirits. "Captain," Dr. Park said softly, "look at that cell over there." Jake followed her gaze to a cell across the corridor. Inside was a creature that looked like a cross between a human and a fish. It had gills on its neck and webbed hands, but it walked upright like a person. "That's one of the Veltari," came a whisper from the next cell. Jake turned to see a humanoid figure with gray skin and large black eyes. "I'm Zek. I've been here for 2 years." "2 years?" Jake asked. "How long? Do they keep prisoners?" "You're not prisoners," Zek said sadly. "You're slaves now. Some of us have been here for decades. The Kethmer have been conquering species for thousands of years. Why don't you fight back?" Ryan asked. Zek touched his collar. "These make it very hard. And even if you could remove them, where would you go? The Kethmer control dozens of worlds. They have ships that can travel between stars faster than anyone else." Jake felt his heart sink, though the collar made even despair feel distant and unimportant. "So there's no hope?" "There was once," Zek said. "The Jacqueron were great warriors. They fought the Kethmer for years before they were finally defeated. But even they couldn't resist forever. What happened to them? They're still here. The Kethmer use them as guards now." The collar programming was changed to make them loyal to their masters. As if summoned by their conversation, a guard appeared in the corridor. Jake gasped when he saw it. The being was clearly once a proud warrior, with powerful muscles and scars from many battles. But now it wore a Kethmer collar and had blank, obedient eyes. "That was their leader," Zek whispered. "His name was Korvuk. He once led armies against the Kethmer. Now he brings them their meals." Jake watched as the former warrior distributed food to the prisoners with mechanical precision. There was no trace of the fighter he had once been. "They'll do the same to us," Dr. Park said quietly. "Turn us into their servants." "No," Jake said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. "Humans are different. We don't give up." "Every species thinks they're different," Zek replied. "The Kethmer have heard it all before." That night, Jake lay on his sleeping mat and tried to think clearly despite the collar's influence. His crew was depending on him to find a way out of this situation. But how could they escape when they could barely think straight? He closed his eyes and tried to remember what made humans special. They were stubborn, that was certain. They refused to give up even when the situation looked hopeless. They were also good at working together, combining their different skills to solve problems. But most importantly, humans were adaptable. They could change and learn and find new ways to survive. Maybe that was the key. Maybe they didn't need to fight the collars directly. Maybe they needed to learn the work around them. "Lisa," he whispered. "Ryan, can you hear me?" "Yes," came the quiet replies. "We need to start paying attention to everything. How the guards move, when they change shifts, how the other prisoners behave. We need to learn the patterns." "What's the point?" Ryan asked. "The collars will just make us forget why we care. Then we'll remind each other," Jake said. Every day, every hour if we have to. We'll keep reminding each other who we are and why we need to get home. You think that will work? Dr. Park asked. I don't know, Jake admitted, but it's better than giving up. Outside their cell, the Crystal City pulsed with alien light. Somewhere in that maze of buildings, 300 humans were learning what it meant to be slaves. But Jake Morrison wasn't ready to accept that fate. Not yet. He didn't know it, but his refusal to surrender completely would be the first crack in a system that had seemed unbreakable for thousands of years. 3 weeks passed in the Crystal Prison. Every day, Jake watched his crew members being taken away for work assignments. Some went to the mines deep underground. Others were sent to construction sites where they built more crystal buildings. For their captors, the collars made them all compliant and obedient, but something strange was happening. While the other species seemed to accept their fate completely, the humans kept small sparks of themselves alive. Jake noticed it first with Maya Santos. The fusion reactor in Sector 7 is running at only 60% efficiency, Maya said to herself one day as guards led her past Jake's cell. Her voice was flat and emotionless because of the collar, but she was still thinking like an engineer. Jake realized that the collars suppressed emotions and the will to resist, but they didn't completely shut down human nature. Maya couldn't help but notice mechanical problems. Dr. Park still observed people's health and behavior. Ben Carter automatically analyzed communication patterns even when he wasn't trying to. Ryan, Jake whispered one night, have you noticed anything about the guard rotations? Third shift is always 2 guards short, Ryan replied immediately. They're spread too thin. Classic tactical error. Even with the collar dulling his military instincts, Ryan was still a soldier at heart. His training ran deeper than the Kethmer technology could reach. Jake began to understand something important. The collars were designed to break species that were motivated mainly by emotion and immediate desires. But humans had something else driving them. They had habits, training, and ingrained patterns of thought that existed below the level of conscious emotion. Zek, Jake called to the alien in the next cell. How long does it usually take for a species to be completely broken? Most give up fighting within the first month, Zek replied. By the second month, they stop thinking about escape entirely. After 6 months, they become perfect servants. Jake had been counting the days. It had been 22 days since their capture. According to Zek's timeline, the humans should be almost completely broken by now. But they weren't. The next day brought a new development. Dr. Park was assigned to work in the medical facility where the Kethmer treated injured workers. Jake watched her leave with a mixture of hope and worry. If anyone could learn useful information about their captors, it would be Lisa. She returned that evening looking exhausted, but more alert than she had been in weeks. I need to tell you something, she whispered after the guards had moved on. But the collar makes it hard to feel like it matters. Tell me anyway, Jake said. The Kethmer aren't as advanced as they want us to think. Their medical technology is actually pretty basic. They rely mostly on the healing properties of their crystal structures. Why is that important? Because I think I understand how the collars work now. They're not just suppressing our emotions. They're feeding off our brain chemistry, using our own neural pathways against us. Jake felt a tiny spark of excitement, immediately dampened by the collar. Can you disable them? Maybe, but I need more time to study the medical equipment. And I need help from Maya. Some of the devices have engineering components I don't understand. Jake looked across the corridor to where Maya was sleeping. Tomorrow, she would go back to the reactor maintenance work that she performed with mechanical precision. But maybe her engineering knowledge could be combined with Lisa's medical skills. How do we get Maya involved without the guards noticing? I don't know yet, Dr. Park admitted. But I'm working on it. The opportunity came 3 days later. A malfunction in the medical facility's power system required an engineer's attention. Maya was brought in to work alongside Dr. Park, though they were watched carefully by Kethmer. Guards. Jake waited anxiously for their return. When they finally came back to the prison that evening, both women looked drained, but somehow more focused than before. "We figured out the power coupling for the medical scanners," Dr. Park whispered. "But more importantly, we figured out something else." "What?" "The collars have a weakness. They're designed to adapt to each species' specific brain chemistry. But humans are more variable than the Kethmer expected. Some of us are more resistant than others." Maya spoke up, her voice still flat, but carrying more information than usual. "The collar system assumes uniform neural responses across a species. But human brain chemistry varies significantly between individuals. The system is overcompensating in some cases and undercompensating in others." Jake didn't understand all the technical details, but he grasped the important part. So some humans might be less affected by the collars. "Exactly," Dr. Park said. "And I think I know who." She nodded toward a cell further down the corridor where Ben Carter was sitting alone. Ben has always been different. More focused, less emotional, even without the collar. I think his natural brain chemistry is making him more resistant to the control system. As if he had heard his name, Ben looked up and made eye contact with Jake. For just a moment, Jake saw something in his communications officer's eyes that had been missing for weeks. Awareness, calculation, the beginning of hope. The next few days, Jake began to notice other signs of resistance among his crew. Tom Wilson, their pilot, started muttering flight calculations under his breath. Several of the security officers began automatically checking their surroundings for threats, even though they couldn't act on what they saw. But the most encouraging sign came from an unexpected source. During a meal distribution, Jake overheard two guards talking in their musical language. Ben Carter was standing nearby, and Jake saw him tilt his head slightly, as if listening. That night, Ben managed to move close enough to Jake's cell to whisper, "I'm starting to understand their language. The collar isn't stopping me from learning. It's like my brain is doing it automatically." Jake felt something he hadn't experienced in weeks. Genuine excitement that the collar couldn't quite suppress. "What are they saying?" "Mostly routine stuff. But yesterday, I heard something interesting. They're having problems with another species they captured recently, the Talvek. They're not adapting to the collar system as expected." "Where are the Talvek being held?" "Different facility." "But Ben, that's not the important part. The important part is that the Kethmer are worried. This has never happened before. They're starting to think that maybe their system isn't as perfect as they thought." Jake lay awake that night, thinking harder than he had since their capture. The collar made it difficult to feel motivated or emotional, but it couldn't stop him from analyzing the situation. Humans weren't breaking the way they were supposed to. Neither were the Talvek, apparently. The Kethmer's perfect system was showing cracks. The next day brought unexpected news. Velthok himself came to the prison, accompanied by several other high-ranking Kethmer. They stopped at Jake's cell and studied him with their 4 eyes. "Captain Morrison," Velthek said, "you and your people are presenting us with an interesting puzzle." Jake said nothing. The collar made it hard to feel defiant, but he could still choose not to cooperate. "Most species are completely compliant by now," Velthok continued. "But your people continue to display concerning behaviors. They work efficiently, yes, but they also observe, calculate, and remember things they have no reason to care about." "Maybe humans are just naturally curious," Jake said carefully. "Perhaps, or perhaps our methods require adjustment." Velthek's colors shifted to darker shades. "We have decided to try a different approach with your species." "What kind of approach?" "Separation." We will scatter your people across different facilities on different worlds. Isolation has proven effective with other resistant species. Jake's blood ran cold, though the collar kept the fear from overwhelming him. If the humans were separated, they would lose any chance of working together to escape. When? He asked. Tomorrow. Consider tonight your farewell to your crew, Captain. You will not see most of them again. As Velthak walked away, Jake felt something the collar had been suppressing for weeks. Pure, focused anger. But this wasn't the wild emotion the collar was designed to dampen. This was cold, calculating fury that came from a deeper place in the human mind. He looked around at his crew, scattered through the prison cells. Tomorrow they would be split up, probably forever. But tonight, they were still together. Tonight, they still had a chance. Jake began to whisper to the humans in nearby cells, passing along a message that spread slowly through the prison. Remember who you are. Remember what we came here to do. And remember that no matter where they take us, we're still human. The collar tried to make the words feel meaningless, but Jake could see small changes in his crew's faces. They were still trapped, still controlled, but they were no longer completely broken. And somewhere in the Crystal City, Kethmer leaders were meeting to discuss the human problem. For the first time in thousands of years, their perfect system was failing. They didn't know it yet, but the failure was about to become a revolution. The transport ships arrived at dawn. Jake watched through his cell window as dark crystal vessels landed near the prison. His crew would be loaded onto these ships and scattered across the Kethmer Empire, probably never to see each other again. But something had changed during the night. As the guards began selecting prisoners for transport, Jake noticed that the humans were moving differently. The collars still suppressed their emotions, but there was a new kind of awareness in their eyes. Maya Santos was among the first to be chosen. As guards led her toward Jake's cell, she stumbled and dropped a small piece of metal near his door. It looked like scrap from her engineering work, but Jake caught the quick look she gave him. It wasn't scrap, it was a tool. Stay strong, Jake whispered as she passed. Always do, she replied, her voice still flat from the collar, but carrying hidden meaning. Ben Carter was selected for a different transport. As he walked by, he coughed and said, "Frequency 7.3. It sounded like meaningless technical talk, but Jake memorized the numbers. Ben had discovered something important about Kethmer communications. One by one, his crew members were taken away. Each one managed to leave Jake with some small piece of information or tool. Dr. Park slipped him a tiny vial that looked like medicine, but was probably something more useful. Tom Wilson dropped a fragment of crystal that might have come from their shuttle's navigation system. When they came for Jake himself, only a few humans remained in the prison. Zek and the other long-term prisoners watched with the same hopeless expression they always wore. "This is how it always ends," Zek said sadly. "Separation breaks even the strongest species." But Jake wasn't feeling broken, despite the collars. Influence? He felt more focused than he had in weeks. His crew had given him tools and information. More importantly, they had shown him that the human spirit could survive even the Kethmar's most advanced control methods. Jake's transport ship was smaller than the others, carrying only a dozen prisoners. Most were humans from his crew, but there were also a few aliens from other species. The journey took 3 days, during which they were kept in small holding cells with minimal food and water got. On the second day, Jake made a discovery. The piece of metal Maya had given him wasn't just a tool. When he examined it closely, he found tiny scratches on its surface. It was a message written in a code they had used during their military training years ago. The message was simple. Collars have backup power. Disable main first. Jake looked around at his fellow prisoners. The humans showed the same controlled awareness he had seen in the prison. Even here, separated from the main group. They were still thinking and planning about the transport finally arrived at its destination, a mining facility on a barren world with 2 suns. The facility was built into the side of a mountain, with crystal structures extending deep underground. Hundreds of workers moved like ants across the surface, all wearing the familiar collars. Jake was assigned to work in the deepest tunnels, extracting rare minerals that the Kethmer used in their technology. The work was hard and dangerous, but he approached it with the same methodical thinking that had made him a good ship captain. His work partner was an alien called Corax, a member of the Talvek species that Ben had mentioned. Corax looked like a large insect with 6 arms and compound eyes, but he moved with intelligence and purpose despite his collar. "You are human," Corax said on their first day working together. His voice came through a translation device built into his collar. "Yes, you're Talvek." "Yes, my people were captured 6 months ago. The Kethmer are having difficulty with us." Jake looked around to make sure no guards were listening. "What kind of difficulty?" "Our brain structure is different from most species. The collars work, but not completely. We still remember who we were. We still plan." This was exactly what Jake had hoped to hear. "Are you planning something?" Corax's compound eyes glittered. "We are always planning. The question is whether your people will join us." Over the following weeks, Jake learned that the mining facility held representatives from dozens of species. Most had been completely broken by the collar system and worked without hope or resistance. But a few species, like the Talvek and humans, retained enough of themselves to keep fighting. The facility's layout became clear to Jake as he worked. The main power generator was located in the central hub, supplying energy to all the collars in the facility. Guard stations were positioned at regular intervals, but they were designed to watch for escape attempts. Not organized rebellion. Jake began to notice patterns in the guard rotations, just as Ryan had taught him to do. He mapped the facility's weak points and identified critical systems. Most importantly, he started making contact with other resistant prisoners. There was Vash, a warrior from the Jekaron species who had managed to retain some of his fighting instincts despite months of captivity. There was Nim, a technician from the Keltar who understood Kethmer computer systems better than their own creators. But the most important contact came from an unexpected source. During his 3rd week at the facility, Jake was approached by one of the guards. It was a Jekaron, one of the proud warrior species that had been completely broken by the Kethmer years ago. "Human," the guard said quietly. "I need to speak with you." Jake was suspicious. The Jekaron guards were supposed to be completely loyal to the Kethmer. "What about?" "My name is Korvek. I was once a leader of my people, before the collars changed me. But something has been happening to me lately. The control is weakening." Jake stared at the massive warrior. This was the same being Zek had told him about, the former general who had become a servant. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because humans are different. Your resistance is affecting other species. Some of us are starting to remember who we used to be." Jake felt his heart race, though the caller tried to dampen his excitement. "How many?" "A few so far, but more each day. The Kethmer don't know yet, but their perfect system is breaking down." That night, Jake lay in his sleeping area and thought about what Korvek had told him. The human resistance wasn't just about escaping anymore. It was about breaking a system that had enslaved entire civilizations for thousands of years. The next day, Jake began to put together a plan. He used the tools and information his crew had given him, combined with what he had learned from the other species. The plan was risky and would require perfect timing, but it might actually work. First, he needed to disable the main power system that fed the collars. Nim, the Kelter technician, had identified the facility's power core and its vulnerabilities. Maya's metal tool could be used to short-circuit critical components. Second, they needed to coordinate with resistant prisoners throughout the facility. Ben's frequency information could be used to send signals through the communication system without alerting the guards. Third, they needed fighters who could handle the guards once the collars were disabled. Korvac and the awakening Chacaron would be essential for this part of the plan. The most difficult part would be timing everything to happen at once. If any part of the plan failed, the Kethmer would increase security and separate all the resistant. Prisoners. They would only get one chance. Jake spent days carefully approaching other prisoners, using work assignments and mealtimes to spread the word. The message was simple: be ready for the signal, and remember who you really are, Dr. Parks. Vial turned out to contain a substance that could temporarily block the collar's chemical effects on the brain. There wasn't enough for everyone, but it could give a few key people clear thinking for the crucial first few minutes of the revolt. Tom Wilson's crystal fragment was actually a piece of their shuttle's emergency beacon. With some modification, it could be used to send a distress signal to any human ships that might be searching for them about 2 months after arriving at the mining facility. Jake decided they were ready. The plan would begin during the night shift change, when security was at its weakest. As the evening meal ended, Jake caught Korvac's eye and nodded slightly. The big warrior's expression didn't change, but Jake saw understanding in his eyes. Tonight, they would find out if broken chains could be reforged into weapons of freedom. Jake returned to his sleeping area and waited for the right moment. Around him, dozens of species settled in for another night of captivity. Most of them had given up hope long ago. But tonight, hope was about to make a return that would shake the foundations of the Kethmer Empire. The human captain closed his eyes and whispered a promise to his scattered crew. We're coming home. All of us. The revolt began at exactly midnight. Jake had taken Dr. Park's chemical compound an hour earlier, and his mind felt clearer than it had in months. The collar was still around his neck, but its control over his thoughts had weakened significantly. Slipped out of his sleeping area and made his way toward the power core. Throughout the facility, other prisoners were moving according to the plan. Nim was heading to the computer control center. Korvac was positioning himself near the main guard station. Vash and the other fighters were spreading out to key defensive positions. The power core was located 3 levels down from Jake's sleeping area. He had memorized the route during his weeks of work, noting camera positions and guard patrols. The facility's designers had never imagined that slaves would organize this kind of coordinated assault. Jake reached the power core without being detected. The room hummed with energy, filled with crystal formations that channeled power throughout the facility. He could see the main coupling that Maya had identified, the weak point where the entire system could be disrupted. Using Maya's modified tool, Jake began working on the coupling. The metal piece was designed to create a controlled short circuit that would disable the collar system without destroying the facility's life support. It had to be precise, or they would all die in the underground complex. As he worked, Jake thought about his crews scattered across the Kethmer Empire. Some were probably in facilities just like this one, wearing collars and digging in alien mines. Others might be on distant worlds, serving as technicians or laborers for their captors. But if this plan worked, it would be the beginning of something larger. The coupling sparked and went dark. Throughout the facility, the crystal structures that powered the collars began to flicker and fail. Jake felt the change immediately. The constant pressure in his mind lifted, and for the first time in months, he could think with complete clarity. The rage he had been suppressing flooded back, along with determination and hope. Emergency lights began flashing throughout the facility. Guards rushed toward the power core, but they ran straight into Korvac and his awakened warriors. The former slaves had been waiting for this moment, and their fury was terrible to behold. Jake ran toward the communication center, where Nim was already working to take control of the facility's systems. The little alien six fingers moved across crystal interfaces with incredible speed, shutting down security systems and opening cell doors throughout the complex. "Can you reach the other facilities?" Jake asked. "Working on it," Nim replied. "The Kethmer communication network is galaxy-wide. If I can break their encryption, we can coordinate revolts everywhere." The sounds of fighting echoed through the corridors as newly freed prisoners confronted their former guards. But this wasn't mindless violence. Jake had learned from studying the Kethmer system. They needed to be strategic, focused, and united. "Attention all prisoners," Jake said into the facility's communication system. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of Earth. Your callers are disabled, but we're not free yet. We need to work together if we want to survive." Throughout the facility, beings who hadn't spoken their own names in years began to remember who they were. The Veltari, the aquatic species Jake had seen in the first prison, began organizing themselves into efficient work groups. The proud chaperone warriors threw off years of forced servitude and started fighting with their original skill and courage. But the most important moment came when Ben Carter's voice crackled over the communication system from a Facility 3. "Star systems away? Jake? Jake, is that really you?" "Ben, how many humans are with you?" 47, including Maya and Tom. "We felt our callers shut down about 10 minutes ago. The whole facility is in chaos. Can you coordinate with the other species there?" "Already happening. It's like you said, Captain. Humans are good at bringing people together." Over the next hour, Jake heard from human voices across the Kethmer Empire. Dr. Park was leading a medical facility revolt on the other side of the galaxy. Ryan was coordinating with alien warriors to take control of a military training complex. Dozens of other facilities were reporting successful uprisings, but Nim brought the most important news of all. "I've broken into their central command network," the alien technician announced. "The Kethmer are completely unprepared for this. They've never faced coordinated resistance across multiple worlds before." "What's the response?" Jake asked. "Panic. They're trying to activate backup color systems, but we've disabled too many power cores. They're also trying to call in their fleet, but most of their ships are scattered across the galaxy on slave-gathering missions." Jake realized they had a window of opportunity, but it wouldn't last long. "Can you access their ship locations?" "Yes. And Jake, there's something else. I can see the locations of Earth ships. Your people have been searching for you. There's a rescue fleet only 2 days away from the Veltari homeworld." "The Veltari have a homeworld?" "Yes. The Kethmer conquered it 50 years ago, but the planet is still inhabited by enslaved Veltari. If we can coordinate with your rescue fleet, ... double quotes Jake understood immediately. This wasn't just about escaping anymore. This was about ending the Kethmer slave empire forever. "Neem, can you send a message to the Earth fleet? Tell them what's happening and give them the coordinates for all the slave facilities." "Already doing it." The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Freed slaves across dozens of worlds worked together to disable Kethmer infrastructure and rescue their fellow prisoners. The humans served as coordinators and inspirers, helping different species overcome centuries of despair and learned helplessness. Kethmer tried to respond, but their entire system had been built on the assumption that slaves would never organize effectively. They had no protocols for dealing with galaxy-wide rebellion, and their military was designed for conquest, not suppressing revolts. When the Earth Rescue Fleet finally arrived at the Veltari homeworld, they found something unprecedented: a coalition of dozens of freed species working together to build something new. Jake stood on the bridge of the Earth flagship, looking out at the fleet of ships that now filled the system. Some were human vessels, Others belonged to species that had been enslaved for generations, but were now free to reclaim their heritage. "Captain Morrison," said Admiral Susan Clark, the commander of the rescue fleet, "your report is hard to believe. You've started a galactic revolution." "We didn't start it," Jake replied. "We just reminded everyone that freedom is possible. The other species did the real work of fighting for it." Dr. Park joined them on the bridge, along with Ryan, Maya, Ben, and the rest of Jake's crew. They had all been reunited over the past week as the rebellion spread and communication networks were restored. "What happens now?" Dr. Park asked. "Now we help them build something better," Jake said. "The Kethmer Empire is collapsing, but that just leaves a vacuum. These species have been slaves for so long that they need help remembering how to be free." "Admiral," Clark looked at the mixed fleet surrounding them. "And you think humans should lead this effort?" "No," Jake said firmly. "Humans should participate in it. There's a difference." Through the view screen, they could see the Valtari homeworld beginning to heal. Crystal slave facilities were being converted into hospitals and schools. Former warriors were teaching others how to fight, but also how to make peace. Engineers from a dozen species were working together to rebuild infrastructure. The Kethmer themselves faced a choice. Some had fled to the edges of the galaxy, trying to maintain their old ways. Others had chosen to join the new coalition, contributing their advanced technology to peaceful purposes. "There's one more thing," Ben Carter said, joining the group. "I've been monitoring communications across the galaxy. Word is spreading about what happened here. Other slave empires are starting to face revolts. The idea that freedom is possible is spreading faster than we ever imagined." Jake smiled, thinking about the title that history would eventually give to these events. They had indeed been shown hell by the Kethmer, but they had shown the galaxy what comes after hell, the choice to build something better than what came before. "So what's our next mission, Captain?" Maya asked. Jake looked out at the stars, where thousands of species were learning that they didn't have to accept tyranny as their permanent fate. "Same as always," he said. "Explore new worlds, meet new people, and help them become the best versions of themselves." Turns out that's not just a human thing after all. It's what free beings do. The ship moved toward the next star system, carrying with it a message that had already begun to transform the galaxy. No matter how dark things become, there is always the possibility of something better on the other side. And sometimes all it takes is someone willing to remind you that freedom is worth fighting for.